Before the crown, Britain before kings. Long before the British crown became a symbol of power, tradition, and continuity, Britain itself was a land without unity, without a throne, and without a single ruler. The story of the British monarchy does not begin with the king wearing a crown. It begins with the land shaped by isolation, invasion, and survival. More than 10,000 years ago, Britain was not an island. A vast land bridge, now lost beneath the waters of the North Sea, connected it to mainland Europe. Early humans crossed freely, moving with animal herds across open plains and forests. These people lived simple lives as hunters and gatherers. There were no nations, no borders, and certainly no royal families. Power belonged to nature alone. As the Ice Age ended, the climate warmed. Melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise, and slowly, the land bridge disappeared. Britain became an island cut off from the continent. This isolation would shape its destiny forever. Over time, tribes settled across the land. These early inhabitants, later known as the Celts, spread throughout what is now England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. They did not form a united kingdom. Instead, Britain was divided into dozens of tribal territories, each ruled by local chieftains. Leadership in Celtic Britain was not absolute. Chieftains ruled through personal strength, family lineage, and the loyalty of warriors. Power could be challenged, taken, or lost at any time. Even more influential than chieftains were the Druids, religious leaders, judges, and keepers of knowledge. They controlled education, law, and spiritual life. In many ways, they held more authority than any warrior leader. This was not a land of kings, but a land of belief, ritual, and constant rivalry. Everything changed when a new power arrived from the south. In 43 AD, the Roman Empire invaded Britain under Emperor Claudius. Roman legions crushed tribal resistance and began transforming the land. Roads cut through forests, forts became towns. Stone replaced wood. Britain was absorbed into the Roman world. For nearly 4 centuries, Rome ruled Britain. Yet Roman control was never complete. Beyond Hadrian's Wall in the north, fierce tribes resisted Roman authority. Even within Roman Britain, loyalty was enforced through military presence, not love. Roman governors ruled in the name of distant emperors. Britain had order but not independence. Most importantly, Rome introduced a powerful new idea: centralized authority. Cities like Londinium, London, Eboracum, York, and Verulamium flourished. Laws were written. Taxes were collected. Christianity slowly began to spread, replacing ancient pagan beliefs. Then, in the early 5th century, Rome collapsed. The Roman legions withdrew, leaving Britain defenseless. Roads decayed. Cities were abandoned. Trade collapsed. The centralized authority that Rome had imposed vanished almost overnight. Britain entered what history would later call the Dark Ages. Into this power vacuum came new invaders from across the sea: the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. They arrived in waves, pushing the native Britons westward into Wales and Cornwall. These invaders did not unite the land. Instead, they carved it into rival kingdoms: Wessex, Mercia, Northumbria, East Anglia, Kent. This was the birth of early England. For the first time, Britain saw rulers who could truly be called kings. But these kings were nothing like modern monarchs. They were warlords, men who ruled by the sword. Their power depended on military success, loyalty of warriors, and the ability to defend land from enemies. There was no single English crown. Kings fought kings. Alliances shifted constantly. A ruler strong one year could be dead the next. Christianity returned, brought by missionaries from Rome and Ireland. With it came a powerful new belief that kings ruled by divine will. A ruler was no longer just a warrior, he was God's chosen leader. This idea would become central to monarchy for centuries to come. Yet England remained divided and vulnerable. In the late 8th century, a new terror arrived. The Vikings. From Scandinavia came longships carrying ruthless warriors. They raided monasteries, burned towns, and slaughtered kings. Entire kingdoms collapsed under Viking pressure. Northumbria fell. East Anglia was destroyed. Mercia weakened. By the mid-9th century, England was on the brink of extinction. Only one kingdom stood firm: Wessex. And from Wessex emerged a man who would forever change British history, a king whose legacy would echo across 1,000 years. His name was Alfred. Alfred of Wessex did not inherit a peaceful throne. He inherited chaos, invasion, and near certain defeat. Viking armies controlled vast areas of England. His people were scattered. His kingdom was small and fragile. But Alfred refused to fall. Through strategy, resilience, and reform, he pushed back the Vikings. He reorganized the army, built fortified towns, and created the foundations of a unified English identity. More importantly, he believed in law, learning, and governance, not just war. For the first time, England had something resembling a national vision. Alfred would later be remembered not just as a king, but as Alfred the Great, the only English monarch ever to earn that title. And from his bloodline would emerge the idea that England could be ruled by one crown. The monarchy had begun. But unity would not come easily. Wars, betrayals, and foreign invasions still lay ahead. And the greatest challenge of all, the arrival of a Norman duke who would change the monarchy forever. Alfred the Great and the birth of England. When Alfred became King of Wessex in 871 AD, England was dying. Viking armies controlled most of the land. Cities lay in ruins. Monasteries, centers of learning and faith, had been burned to the ground. The old Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were collapsing one by one. Many believed it was only a matter of time before Wessex fell as well. Alfred was young, inexperienced, and facing enemies who had spent decades mastering war. Within his first year as king, he suffered repeated defeats. Viking forces pushed deeper into Wessex, and Alfred was forced into hiding. For a time, England's last free king lived as a fugitive in the marshes of Athelney. History could have ended there. But it did not. From hiding, Alfred planned. He learned from defeat rather than surrendering to it. When the moment came, he rallied his people, farmers, warriors, nobles, and priests, and launched a decisive counterattack against the Vikings. In 878 AD, Alfred defeated the Viking leader Guthrum at the Battle of Edington. This victory did more than save Wessex. It reshaped England. Alfred negotiated a treaty that divided the land between the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings. The Viking-controlled regions became known as the Danelaw. Though England was still divided, Alfred had achieved something extraordinary: survival. But Alfred's greatest legacy was not military. It was political. Unlike earlier kings, Alfred believed that a ruler's duty was not just to fight, but to govern wisely. He introduced legal reforms, creating a written law code based on Christian principles. He encouraged education, translating important texts into Old English so that knowledge would no longer be limited to Latin-speaking elites. Alfred rebuilt towns, strengthened defenses, and laid the foundations of a permanent army and navy. For the first time, England had a system designed not just for war, but for long-term stability. When Alfred died in 899 AD, he left behind more than a kingdom. He left behind an idea: England as a unified realm. His successors would turn that idea into reality. His son, Edward the Elder, and daughter, Ethelflaed, Lady of the Mercians, continued his work. Together, they pushed Viking forces back and reclaimed lost territories. Slowly, kingdom by kingdom, England was brought under Anglo-Saxon control. By 927 AD, Alfred's grandson, Aethelstan, achieved what no ruler before him had done. He became the first king of all England. For the first time in history, England was a single kingdom under one crown. The monarchy now had a clear identity. Yet unity did not mean peace. Viking threats returned again and again. New invasions came from Denmark and Norway. Kings rose and fell in rapid succession. Some ruled wisely. Others ruled brutally. In the 11th century, England faced its greatest test since Alfred. King Ethelred II, later remembered as Ethelred the Unready, proved to be a disastrous ruler. His indecision and weak leadership allowed Viking forces, led by Sweyn Forkbeard, to conquer England. In 1016, England fell under Viking rule. The crown passed to Knut the Great, a Danish king who ruled not only England, but a vast North Sea empire stretching across Scandinavia. Surprisingly, Knut governed England effectively, respecting its laws and traditions. But his empire was fragile. After Knut's death, his heirs fought among themselves. Chaos returned. The Viking dynasty collapsed within a generation. In 1042, the English throne returned to an Anglo-Saxon ruler, Edward the Confessor. Edward was deeply religious and largely uninterested in governance. He spent much of his reign focused on faith rather than politics. Crucially, he failed to produce an heir. This single failure would change British history forever. When Edward died in January 1066, England faced a succession crisis. Multiple men claimed the throne. Harold Godwinson, the most powerful noble in England, was crowned king by the English council. But his claim was challenged immediately. To the north, the Viking king Harald Hardrada prepared an invasion. Across the Channel, William, Duke of Normandy, claimed Edward had promised him the throne years earlier. In 1066, England faced invasion from two sides. Harold moved quickly, defeating the Vikings at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. It was a decisive victory, but it left his army exhausted. Days later, William landed in southern England. On October 14, 1066, the two armies met at the Battle of Hastings. By nightfall, Harold was dead. William was victorious. With that single battle, the Anglo-Saxon monarchy ended. A foreign ruler now sat on the English throne. William would become known to history as William the Conqueror. And England would never be the same again. The monarchy had survived invasions, collapse, and rebirth, but now it faced its greatest transformation yet. The age of Norman kings had begun. The Norman conquest and the making of medieval England. William's victory at the Battle of Hastings in 1066 did not merely replace one king with another. It marked the most profound transformation in English history. With a single battle, England's ruling class, language, laws, and monarchy were reshaped forever. William, Duke of Normandy, was crowned King of England on Christmas Day, 1066. But wearing the crown did not mean the land was secure. England was hostile, unfamiliar, and resistant. William was a foreign ruler governing a conquered people who had no love for him. Rebellion followed rebellion. Northern England rose against him. Anglo-Saxon nobles attempted to reclaim their lands. Viking forces returned, hoping to exploit the chaos. William responded with absolute brutality. Between 1069 and 1070, William carried out what became known as the Harrying of the North. Villages were burned, crops destroyed, livestock slaughtered. Entire regions were left to starve. It was a deliberate act of terror designed to crush resistance. It worked. By the early 1070s, William's rule was uncontested. But William did not rule England as an English king. He ruled as a Norman conqueror. Almost all Anglo-Saxon nobles were stripped of their lands. Their estates were redistributed to Norman lords who owed loyalty directly to William. England's ruling class was replaced almost overnight. Castles rose across the landscape, stone symbols of domination. The Tower of London became the ultimate reminder of royal power. Norman French replaced Old English as the language of the court, law, and nobility. Even today, traces of this remain in the English language. The monarchy had become feudal. William owned all the land. Nobles held it only by royal permission. In return, they owed military service. This system bound the kingdom together under the crown. In 1086, William ordered the creation of the Domesday Book, an unprecedented survey of England's land, wealth, and population. Nothing like it had ever been attempted. It allowed the crown to tax, control, and govern with unmatched authority. The English monarchy was now stronger than ever before. Yet this strength came at a cost. William ruled with fear. His reign was stable but not loved. When he died in 1087, his lands were divided among his sons, planting the seeds of conflict. England passed to William II, known as William Rufus, a ruthless, aggressive king who clashed constantly with the church and his nobles. William II ruled through intimidation. He taxed heavily, seized church lands, and ignored traditional limits on royal behavior. His sudden death in a mysterious hunting accident in 1100, shot by an arrow in the New Forest, sparked rumors of assassination. His younger brother moved quickly. Henry I seized the throne. Henry understood something his predecessors did not: power alone was not enough. To rule effectively, the monarchy needed legitimacy. Henry issued the Charter of Liberties, promising to respect certain laws and limit abuses of royal power. It was not democracy, but it was a crucial step. For the first time, a king publicly acknowledged that his authority had boundaries. Henry proved to be a capable ruler. He strengthened administration, improved justice, and stabilized the kingdom. But his greatest failure was personal. His only legitimate son drowned in a shipwreck in 1120. England faced another succession crisis. Henry named his daughter, Empress Matilda, as his heir. But when Henry died in 1135, the nobility refused to accept a female ruler. Instead, they crowned Stephen of Blois. What followed was nearly 20 years of civil war, an era remembered as the Anarchy. England descended into chaos. Rival kings claimed the throne. Law collapsed. Barons built unauthorized castles and ruled like independent warlords. Chroniclers wrote that Christ and his saints slept. The monarchy was weakened almost to the point of collapse. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Stephen would remain king, but Matilda's son would inherit the throne. In 1154, that son became king. His name was Henry II. With Henry II, the English monarchy entered a new age. Henry was energetic, intelligent, and relentless. He controlled not only England, but vast territories in France. His empire, known as the Angevin Empire, stretched from Scotland to the Pyrenees. Henry reformed law, establishing royal courts and laying the foundations of common law. Justice became centralized under the crown. The king was no longer just a warrior or landowner, he was the source of law itself. But Henry's reign was marked by tragedy. His conflict with his former friend, Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, ended in murder inside a cathedral. The shock echoed across Europe. Henry was forced to publicly repent. Even more destructive were the rebellions of his own sons, encouraged by their mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful women in medieval history. Henry's family tore itself apart. When Henry died in 1189, his empire passed to his son, Richard I, better known as Richard the Lionheart. Richard was a legendary warrior and a disastrous ruler. He spent most of his reign fighting crusades abroad. He barely ruled England at all. To fund his wars, he taxed heavily. When he was captured and held for ransom, England paid a fortune for his release. Richard died without an heir. The crown passed to his younger brother, King John. John would become one of the most infamous kings in British history. He lost most of England's French territories through incompetence and defeat. He overtaxed his nobles. He abused royal authority. He made enemies everywhere. In 1215, the English barons rebelled. They forced John to accept a document that would forever change the relationship between king and subject. The Magna Carta. Though limited and flawed, Magna Carta established a revolutionary principle: the king was not above the law. John soon tried to overturn it, but the idea could not be erased. When John died in 1216, the monarchy was weakened, restrained, and transformed. The crown still existed, but its absolute power was broken. The medieval monarchy had been forged in conquest, blood, and compromise. And greater struggles still lay ahead. the Plantagenets, Parliament, and the struggle for power. When King John died in 1216, the English monarchy stood at a dangerous crossroads. The crown still existed, but its authority had been openly challenged. Magna Carta had planted a radical idea into the political soul of England: the king could be restrained. John's heir, Henry III, was only 9 years old. England did not collapse because powerful men stepped in to rule in the king's name. The monarchy survived, but it emerged changed. Henry III grew up ruling a kingdom where trust in royal power was fragile and constantly tested. Henry ruled for more than 50 years, but his reign was marked by weakness. He relied heavily on foreign advisors, overspent royal wealth, and repeatedly failed in military campaigns. His inability to govern effectively angered the nobility. For the first time, rebellion against the king was not just violent, it was political. In the 1250s, English barons forced Henry to accept the provisions of Oxford, which placed royal decisions under the supervision of a council of nobles. It was an early form of constitutional control. At the heart of this movement stood Simon de Montfort. De Montfort led a rebellion against Henry and, in 1265, took control of the government. Most importantly, he summoned an assembly that included not just nobles and clergy, but also representatives of towns. This gathering is often regarded as the birth of the English Parliament. Though de Montfort was later defeated and killed, the idea endured. Kings could no longer rule alone. They needed consent, especially when demanding money. When Henry III died in 1272, his son ascended the throne. Edward I was everything his father was not. Edward was a warrior, a lawmaker, and a forceful ruler. He reasserted royal authority, reformed laws, and expanded the role of Parliament, though always to strengthen the crown, not weaken it. Edward conquered Wales, bringing it under English control, and built massive stone castles to enforce dominance. He even gave his son the title Prince of Wales, a tradition that continues today. But Scotland resisted. Edward attempted to dominate Scotland, igniting wars that would last generations. Figures like William Wallace and Robert the Bruce emerged as symbols of resistance. Edward died in 1307, still determined to crush Scotland. His son, Edward II, was a disaster. Edward II lacked military skill, political intelligence, and authority. He relied on favorites, ignored nobles, and lost disastrously to the Scots at the Battle of Bannockburn. The nobility turned against him. In a shocking moment in royal history, Edward II was deposed by his own wife, Queen Isabella, and her ally, Roger Mortimer. Edward later died in captivity, almost certainly murdered. For the first time, an English king had been forcibly removed from the throne. The monarchy had survived, but its vulnerability was now undeniable. Edward II's son, Edward III, restored royal prestige. He was ambitious, charismatic, and determined to reclaim lost glory. Under Edward III, England entered the 100 Years' War against France, a conflict driven by Edward's claim to the French throne. English victories at battles like Crécy and Poitiers transformed the monarchy into a symbol of national pride. Edward III also formalized Parliament's role in taxation, cementing a political balance that would define England for centuries. But war came at a terrible cost. In the mid-14th century, the Black Death swept across England, killing nearly half the population. Society changed forever. Labor became valuable. Peasants demanded rights. Old feudal structures began to crack. By the time Edward III died in 1377, the monarchy ruled a very different England. His grandson, Richard II, took the throne as a child. Richard believed deeply in the divine right of kings. He ruled with arrogance and ignored political realities. When peasants revolted in 1381, Richard faced them personally but later betrayed their leaders. As he grew older, his rule became increasingly tyrannical. In 1399, Richard was overthrown by his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, who became Henry IV. This act shattered tradition. A reigning king had been removed and replaced by force. Henry IV spent his reign battling rebellions and defending his legitimacy. His son, Henry V, would do what his father could not: unite the nation. Henry V was one of England's greatest warrior kings. His victory against overwhelming odds at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415 became legendary. He revived English claims in France and brought the monarchy to the height of medieval power. But Henry V died young. His infant son, Henry VI, inherited the throne. Henry VI was gentle, deeply religious, and utterly unsuited to rule. Under his reign, England lost its French territories. The nobility fractured into rival factions. Two royal houses now claimed dominance. The House of Lancaster, the House of York. England slid toward civil war. A war that would tear the monarchy apart. A war remembered as the Wars of the Roses. The Wars of the Roses, when kings destroyed kings. By the mid-15th century, England's monarchy teetered on the brink of collapse. The centuries-long consolidation of power, conquest, and law had produced a strong crown, but the royal family itself was fracturing from within. Rivalries, disputed claims, and ambition tore the kingdom apart. This era became known as the Wars of the Roses, named for the emblems of the two contending houses, the White Rose of York and the Red Rose of Lancaster. The conflict began during the reign of Henry VI, a weak and indecisive king. His inability to assert authority, combined with frequent bouts of mental instability, left the realm vulnerable. Nobles took advantage, building private armies and pursuing personal power. England, already weakened by previous wars with France, now faced internal strife. The Lancasters, supporters of Henry VI, clung to legitimacy through bloodline, while the Yorkists, descended from earlier kings, challenged that authority. Families were divided. Friends turned enemies. Loyalties shifted with alarming speed. The first open clashes occurred in the 1450s. Nobles led their private armies into battle, devastating the countryside. Castles changed hands repeatedly, and London, the symbolic heart of the kingdom, teetered between the two sides. Ordinary people bore the brunt, villages burned, crops destroyed, taxes imposed to fund endless wars. The Yorkists initially gained the upper hand. Richard, Duke of York, was a formidable leader, skilled in strategy and politics. His forces captured King Henry and effectively controlled the government. But Richard's triumph was short-lived. He was killed in battle in 1460, leaving his son, Edward IV, to claim the Yorkist cause. Edward IV proved to be a decisive and charismatic ruler. He reclaimed London, defeated the Lancasters, and established himself firmly as king. His reign marked a brief period of stability and prosperity. England, for the first time in decades, glimpsed peace. Yet the Wars of the Roses were far from over. The Lancasters were relentless. Edward's victory was challenged repeatedly by Margaret of Anjou, Henry VI's ambitious queen, who fought fiercely to restore her husband to power. Battles raged across the country, Mortimer's Cross, Towton, Barnet, and Tewkesbury each leaving thousands dead and the monarchy bloodied but unbroken. Edward IV died unexpectedly in 1483. His son, Edward V, was a boy of just 12. Power was again vulnerable. Edward's uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, seized the throne, declaring himself Richard III. Edward V and his younger brother disappeared, likely murdered in the Tower of London. This mystery remains one of England's darkest royal enigmas. Richard III's reign was short and turbulent. He faced rebellion led by the last Lancastrian hope, Henry Tudor, who had spent years in exile in Brittany. Henry gathered support from discontented nobles and landed in England in 1485. The two armies met at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III was killed in battle. His death marked the end of the Plantagenet dynasty. With him, centuries of internal York-Lancaster rivalry came to a violent conclusion. Henry Tudor ascended the throne as Henry VII, founding the House of Tudor. He united the warring factions by marrying Elizabeth of York, symbolically merging the red and white roses into a single emblem, the Tudor rose. This marriage ended the Wars of the Roses and ushered in a new era of royal stability. Under Henry VII, the monarchy became stronger than ever. The crown consolidated power, reformed the administration, and established a financial foundation that would endure for generations. England, scarred by decades of civil war, finally began to recover. The Wars of the Roses had taught a brutal lesson: legitimacy alone was insufficient. The crown required strategy, alliances, and sometimes ruthlessness to survive. Monarchs had learned that the throne was as fragile as it was coveted. The Tudors would rule England for over a century, transforming it into a nation capable of power and ambition unlike any before. They would produce kings and queens whose names are now legendary: Henry VIII, the Reformer, Elizabeth I, the unyielding Queen, and others who shaped England's religious, political, and cultural destiny. Yet even the Tudors' stability would not last forever. Foreign threats, religious upheaval, and succession crises constantly loomed. Monarchs would still face rebellion, betrayal, and the ever-present shadow of mortality. The Wars of the Roses had ended, but the struggle for survival and supremacy was a lesson every future monarch would carry into their reign. The Tudor dynasty, Reformation, Henry VIII, and the birth of modern monarchy. With the crown firmly in the hands of Henry VII, England entered an era of unprecedented transformation. The Wars of the Roses had left scars across the land, but the Tudors were determined to solidify royal authority, consolidate wealth, and prevent the chaos that had plagued Plantagenet England. This period would see the monarchy not only survive but evolve into a modern institution capable of exerting influence across Europe and the world. Henry VII's reign focused on stability. He strengthened the royal treasury, curbed the power of rebellious nobles, and established mechanisms to monitor and control the barons who had once torn the kingdom apart. Through shrewd diplomacy and strategic marriages, he secured England's place in European politics. Most importantly, Henry VII left the throne to his son, Henry VIII, setting the stage for the monarchy's next transformative chapter. Henry VIII ascended the throne in 1509, a young, charismatic king, beloved by his people. His early years were marked by cultural patronage, lavish ceremonies, and strong alliances with European powers. Yet his reign would be defined by ambition, passion, and unprecedented upheaval. Henry VIII's personal life would reshape England's monarchy, religion, and governance in ways no one could have imagined. Henry's desire for a male heir became an obsession. His first marriage, to Catherine of Aragon, produced only one surviving child, Mary. Frustrated by the lack of a male heir, Henry sought to annul the marriage, a request the Pope refused. Henry's response was radical. He broke with the Roman Catholic Church, declaring himself supreme head of the Church of England. The English Reformation had begun. This act had profound consequences. By establishing the monarchy as the head of the Church, Henry VIII centralized unprecedented authority. No longer would the Pope in Rome dictate religious law in England. The crown now controlled faith, property, and doctrine. Monasteries were dissolved, their wealth confiscated by the crown, enriching Henry, and strengthening his rule. England's religious landscape was irrevocably changed. Henry married 6 times in his relentless pursuit of a male heir. His children Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward would later rule in succession, each leaving a unique imprint on the monarchy. Henry's reign also expanded royal power through legal reforms, economic development, and a more professional bureaucracy. The Tudors had transformed England from a feudal state into a centralized monarchy. Yet Henry VIII's reign was also violent and merciless. Those who opposed him, including advisors, nobles, and even former friends, faced execution. Thomas More, Anne Boleyn, and countless others paid with their lives. The message was clear: the king's authority was absolute, and the crown was to be obeyed without question. Following Henry VIII's death in 1547, his 9-year-old son, Edward VI, became king. Edward's brief reign advanced Protestant reforms, further entrenching the monarchy's control over religion. Yet Edward's untimely death in 1553 sparked a succession crisis that brought the crown to Henry VIII's first daughter, Mary I. Mary, a devout Catholic, attempted to reverse her father's religious reforms. Her persecution of Protestants earned her the nickname Bloody Mary, and her reign was marked by tension and rebellion. England was again caught in the struggle between monarchy and religion, a theme that would recur throughout history. Upon Mary's death in 1558, the throne passed to Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Elizabeth's ascension marked the beginning of a golden age. She skillfully navigated political intrigue, foreign threats, and religious divisions. Her reign saw the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, the flowering of English literature with Shakespeare and Marlowe, and the consolidation of the Tudor monarchy as a symbol of national identity. Elizabeth I ruled without producing an heir, earning her the title the Virgin Queen. Her death in 1603 ended the Tudor dynasty, but the monarchy's structure and authority had been transformed forever. England had emerged as a centralized, powerful state with a monarchy capable of wielding authority over law, religion, and politics. Yet the end of the Tudors brought new challenges. The crown passed to the House of Stuart, beginning with James I, uniting England and Scotland under a single monarch. The subsequent centuries would test the monarchy as never before. Civil war, regicide, restoration, and revolution would redefine the relationship between king and subject. The Tudors had established a monarchy that was strong, visible, and symbolic of national identity. They had centralized power, transformed religion, and demonstrated that the crown could survive internal strife and succession crises. England now had a monarchy ready to face the modern world, but the struggle between royal authority and the people's rights was only beginning. The Stuart dynasty, civil war and the execution of a king. With the death of Elizabeth I in 1603, the Tudor era came to an end. England's crown passed to James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England, uniting the two kingdoms under a single monarch for the first time. While this seemed a triumph of dynastic continuity, it also sowed the seeds of tension between the monarchy and parliament, tensions that would erupt into civil war decades later. James I firmly believed in the divine right of kings, the idea that the monarch's authority came directly from God and could not be challenged by anyone, not even Parliament. This belief clashed with the growing political power of the House of Commons, which increasingly insisted on taxation and laws being subject to their consent. James's reign was marked by clashes over money, religion, and political authority. James's son, Charles I, inherited a volatile kingdom in 1625. Like his father, Charles believed in the divine right of kings. He frequently bypassed Parliament to raise funds, imposed unpopular taxes, and enforced religious conformity, particularly favoring high Anglican practices that angered Puritans. The king's assertiveness and financial demands created widespread resentment across England, Scotland, and Ireland. By 1642, tensions had reached a breaking point. England was plunged into civil war, the English Civil War, pitting the monarchy against Parliament. Supporters of the king, known as Royalists or Cavaliers, fought against the Parliamentarians or Roundheads, who sought to limit royal power. The conflict was brutal, dividing families, destroying towns, and leading to thousands of deaths. Charles I's forces initially performed well, but the parliamentarians, under leaders like Oliver Cromwell, developed more disciplined armies. Key victories, including the Battle of Naseby in 1645, turned the tide against the king. By 1646, Charles was captured, and his monarchy faced its greatest crisis. Negotiations failed. Charles refused to compromise. Parliament saw no other option. In 1649, in a historic and shocking act, Charles I was tried for treason. He was convicted and executed by beheading outside the Banqueting House in London. The execution of a reigning English king was unprecedented. The monarchy, for the first time in centuries, had been abolished. England became a republic, known as the Commonwealth, led by Oliver Cromwell as Lord Protector. The monarchy had been dethroned, its divine authority shattered, and its future uncertain. For over a decade, England operated without a king, experimenting with governance by Parliament and a protectorate. Yet the monarchy's disappearance was temporary. After Cromwell's death in 1658, instability returned. England, weary of military rule and political chaos, longed for familiar leadership. In 1660, the crown was restored with Charles II, son of the executed Charles I. The monarchy had returned, but it would never again wield absolute power. The Restoration period saw careful negotiation between king and parliament. Charles II ruled with charm and pragmatism, avoiding the mistakes of his father. The monarchy became a symbol of continuity and national identity, balancing authority with the growing power of representative government. Laws, taxation, and policy increasingly required parliamentary approval, setting the stage for a constitutional monarchy. This era also saw the rise of political parties, modern diplomacy, and royal patronage of the arts. The monarchy was no longer solely a tool of conquest and religion, it became a cultural and political institution. Charles II's brother, James II, inherited the throne in 1685. His open Catholicism alarmed the Protestant nation. Parliament and the public feared a return to absolute monarchy and religious persecution. In 1688, James II was deposed in the Glorious Revolution, replaced by his daughter Mary II and her husband William III of Orange, who ruled jointly. The Glorious Revolution codified the principle that the monarchy could not govern without Parliament. William and Mary accepted the English Bill of Rights, guaranteeing parliamentary supremacy, regular elections, and limits on royal authority. England had finally transitioned from an absolute monarchy toward the constitutional system that would define its future. From the Tudors to the Stuarts, England had experienced conquest, reform, civil war, and revolution. Kings had been overthrown, executed, and restored. Yet through centuries of conflict, the monarchy endured, adapting, surviving, and evolving. The Stuart era taught a critical lesson: power without consent was fragile. Authority required negotiation, compromise, and legitimacy. Monarchs had learned that the crown's survival depended not only on divine right, armies, and wealth, but also on the people, their representatives, and the rule of law. The Hanoverians, constitutional monarchy, and the rise of the British Empire. The death of Queen Anne in 1714 marked the end of the Stuart line. The crown passed to George I, Elector of Hanover, in Germany, establishing the House of Hanover. George I spoke little English, had little knowledge of British customs, and relied heavily on ministers to govern. This shift marked a significant turning point. The monarchy began evolving into a constitutional institution, balancing royal authority with parliamentary power. The early Hanoverian kings George I and his son George II oversaw a period of political transformation. While they retained formal control, the rise of prime ministers and a professional cabinet reduced the monarch's direct influence over daily governance. Figures like Robert Walpole, considered Britain's first prime minister, demonstrated that the monarchy could rule through council rather than direct command. At the same time, Britain was expanding beyond its borders. The Hanoverian era coincided with the rise of the British Empire. Trade, colonization, and naval supremacy became central to national identity. Monarchs, while often distant from direct political power, provided stability and legitimacy that allowed Britain to grow economically and militarily. The crown became symbolic of unity, continuity, and national prestige. George III, who ascended the throne in 1760, was different from his predecessors. He sought to assert greater control, taking a personal interest in governance. His reign was marked by both triumph and turmoil. Britain emerged victorious from global conflicts, but the American Revolution challenged the monarchy's authority and reshaped the world. The loss of the American colonies in 1783 was a blow, yet the monarchy endured, adapting to the changing political landscape. Throughout the 18th and early 19th centuries, Britain faced internal challenges as well. Calls for political reform, religious tolerance, and social change tested the monarchy's adaptability. The Crown increasingly relied on Parliament to govern effectively, cementing the foundations of the constitutional monarchy that persists today. Monarchs like George IV and William IV navigated the balance between ceremonial prestige and practical power. Public perception became essential. Appearances, patronage, and influence over culture mattered as much as governance. By the Victorian era, the monarchy had evolved into a highly visible institution that represented Britain's global prominence, domestic stability, and cultural identity. The Victorian era, empire at its height and the modernization of the monarchy. The ascension of Queen Victoria in 1837 marked one of the most iconic periods in British history. At just 18 years old, she inherited the crown during a time of profound social, political, and technological change. Her reign, which lasted over 6 decades, would see the British monarchy transformed into a symbol of national identity, moral authority, and global power. Victoria's era coincided with the Industrial Revolution, which reshaped Britain's economy, society, and culture. Factories and railways transformed cities, while Britain's naval supremacy enabled global trade and colonization. The monarchy became a unifying symbol in a rapidly changing world. Queen Victoria's image as a devoted mother, steadfast ruler, and moral compass resonated across the empire, lending legitimacy to British rule both at home and abroad. Victoria married her cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, in 1840. Their partnership profoundly influenced the monarchy. Albert served as advisor, reformer, and organizer, championing education, science, and the arts. Together, they redefined royal life, emphasizing family, duty, and decorum. This model of domestic monarchy would influence generations of European royalty. Under Victoria, the monarchy became increasingly ceremonial and symbolic, while Parliament handled governance. The Crown retained authority but wielded it in cooperation with elected officials, cementing Britain's identity as a constitutional monarchy. Victoria carefully navigated politics, understanding when to intervene and when to remain neutral, a skill that allowed the monarchy to endure through crises without overstepping its limits. The British Empire expanded to unprecedented heights. India became the crown jewel, and colonies across Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific extended Britain's reach. Victoria herself was crowned Empress of India in 1876, a symbolic act highlighting the monarchy's global prestige. Royal authority, while limited domestically, projected influence across continents, embodying the power and unity of the empire. Victoria's reign was not without challenges. Political reform movements, demands for workers' rights, and the rise of democratic sentiment pressured the monarchy to adapt. The Queen also faced personal tragedy, including the death of Prince Albert in 1861, which plunged her into mourning for years. Her her ability to endure personal grief while maintaining public duty enhanced the monarchy's moral authority and mystique. The Victorian monarchy became a symbol of continuity in a rapidly modernizing world. Royal ceremonies, state occasions, and public appearances reinforced the monarchy's visibility and importance. Innovations like photography and newspapers helped project a controlled image of royal life, allowing the crown to connect with subjects in ways previously impossible. By the end of the 19th century, Queen Victoria had transformed the British monarchy from a political power to a moral and cultural institution. Her reign solidified the crown's place at the heart of British identity, combining tradition, symbolism, and global prestige. The monarchy's ability to adapt, survive, and represent national values ensured its relevance for generations to come. Victoria's death in 1901 marked the end of an era, but the monarchy, strengthened and modernized, would face the new challenges of the 20th century: world wars, social change, and the evolution of the royal family as a symbol rather than a governing authority. The 20th century, world wars and the rise of the modern royal family. The 20th century brought unprecedented challenges to the British monarchy. Global conflict, social upheaval, and changing political norms tested the crown in ways never before imagined. Yet through resilience, adaptation, and careful management, the monarchy survived and evolved into the modern institution we recognize today. The reign of Edward VII, 1901 to 1910, marked a transitional period. Edward, son of Queen Victoria, modernized the monarchy's image and engaged actively in diplomacy. Though his reign was brief, he helped the crown maintain relevance in an increasingly complex world. His successor, George V, ascended the throne in 1910, presiding over an era of dramatic change. George V faced perhaps the most daunting crisis of any monarch: World War I. The war not only devastated Europe but also threatened the monarchy's legitimacy. Anti-German sentiment in Britain surged during the conflict. In response, George V changed the royal family's name from the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to the House of Windsor, emphasizing English identity and loyalty to the nation. The monarchy also endured personal and political tragedies. George's sons served in the military, some lost their lives. Public opinion demanded that the crown remain visible, supportive, and morally upright. Through careful engagement, George V ensured that the monarchy maintained public trust despite national hardship. The interwar period brought further challenges. Economic depression, social unrest, and political movements threatened traditional hierarchies. Edward VIII, George V's eldest son, ascended the throne in 1936 but abdicated within a year to marry American divorcee Wallis Simpson. This unprecedented act created a constitutional crisis, demonstrating that even in modern times, personal decisions could shake the monarchy. Edward's abdication placed his brother, George VI, on the throne. George VI was unprepared for kingship but rose to the occasion. His reign coincided with World War II, a period that demanded moral courage, leadership, and national solidarity. Alongside his wife, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, George VI became a symbol of resilience. His broadcasts during the Blitz and frequent public appearances strengthened public confidence and loyalty to the crown. World War II solidified the monarchy's role as a symbol of national unity. Unlike rulers in some European countries, the British royal family shared hardships with the public, reinforcing their legitimacy in the modern age. This period cemented the monarchy's transformation from political authority to cultural and moral symbol. The post-war era brought both expansion and challenges. Britain's empire began to dissolve, with colonies gaining independence. Social change, media scrutiny, and public opinion increasingly influenced the monarchy. Through it all, the crown adapted. Visibility, public service, and moral authority became more important than direct governance. In 1952, the monarchy entered a new epoch with the ascension of Queen Elizabeth II. Her reign, lasting over 70 years, would become the longest in British history. Elizabeth II embodied continuity, stability, and adaptability. She navigated decolonization, modernization, political crises, and family controversies with a combination of discretion, diplomacy, and public engagement. The 20th century transformed the British monarchy from a hereditary institution of political power into a modern symbol of unity, tradition, and continuity. It faced wars, abdications, and changing global influence, but it endured. By the time of Elizabeth II's reign, the monarchy had established itself as a global icon, respected for both tradition and adaptability. Elizabeth II, modernization and the changing role of the monarchy. When Queen Elizabeth II ascended the throne in 1952, Britain had emerged from the shadow of World War II, but it faced economic challenges, decolonization, and social transformation. The monarchy, once a symbol of direct authority, had become primarily ceremonial, but its influence as a unifying symbol of national identity remained vital. Elizabeth II's early reign coincided with the Britain redefining its place in the world. The empire was transforming into the Commonwealth of Nations, with former colonies gaining independence while retaining symbolic ties to the crown. Elizabeth embraced this evolution, traveling extensively, meeting foreign leaders, and promoting diplomatic ties. Her dedication to service earned her respect both domestically and internationally. Domestically, the monarchy adapted to a rapidly changing society. Television, radio, and later digital media transformed public perception. The royal family became a visible institution, subject to scrutiny, yet capable of shaping national sentiment. Queen Elizabeth used media strategically, understanding that public connection was essential to legitimacy in a democratic society. Her reign also saw personal and institutional challenges. Marriages, divorces, and family controversies attracted intense media attention. The monarchy had to balance privacy with public expectation. Elizabeth's measured responses, emphasis on duty, and steadfast adherence to protocol helped maintain respect and continuity. Elizabeth II championed modernization while respecting tradition. She reformed aspects of royal finances, opened Buckingham Palace to the public, and encouraged charitable engagement. The monarchy evolved into a symbol of stability in times of political change, economic uncertainty, and cultural transformation. Her leadership reinforced that the crown's relevance depended not on ruling power but on moral authority, national representation, and public trust. The Queen's long reign bridged centuries of history. She represented the continuity of monarchy from medieval England to the modern constitutional state. From surviving world wars to witnessing the rise and fall of empires, Elizabeth II embodied the monarchy's ability to endure, adapt, and unify. By the early 21st century, the monarchy had become a global institution. Royal events, coronations, and ceremonies were broadcast worldwide, symbolizing not only British tradition but also international fascination with continuity, history, and heritage. Elizabeth II's reign demonstrated that monarchy could survive in a democratic age by transforming itself from ruling authority to cultural and moral institution. Yet the monarchy faced ongoing challenges, shifts in societal expectations, media scrutiny, and questions of relevance. Despite these pressures, Elizabeth II's approach rooted in duty, visibility, and stability ensured that the monarchy remained respected and integral to national identity. Charles III and the future of the British monarchy, continuity in a changing world. With the passing of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, the British monarchy entered a new era. Her son, Charles III, ascended the throne, inheriting not only the crown but also the weight of centuries of history, tradition, and expectation. The transition marked both continuity and change. The crown remained, but the monarchy now faced unprecedented scrutiny in a rapidly evolving global society. Charles III had spent decades preparing for kingship, observing the responsibilities and demands placed on his mother, while shaping his own vision for the monarchy. Unlike his predecessors, he entered the role in an age of social media, global transparency, and heightened public debate. His reign would require balancing tradition with modern expectations, ceremonial duty with active engagement, and family legacy with personal vision. One of the primary challenges facing Charles III is the evolving perception of the monarchy itself. While Elizabeth II maintained a largely apolitical and ceremonial approach, Charles has long expressed strong opinions on environmental issues, architecture, and social matters. As king, his voice must navigate the delicate line between influence and neutrality, ensuring the crown retains legitimacy without overstepping its constitutional role. The British monarchy today also faces questions of relevance. Social change, Republican movements, and critiques of hereditary privilege have challenged the public perception of royal authority. At the same time, the monarchy remains a symbol of unity, continuity, and cultural heritage. Its centuries of history offering stability in a world often marked by rapid change. Charles II's family plays a pivotal role in shaping the monarchy's future. His children, including Prince William and Prince Harry, represent the next generation of royalty. Their public personas, philanthropic work, and global visibility continue to influence the monarchy's image. Balancing tradition with modernity, and privacy with public life, remains one of the Crown's greatest ongoing challenges. The modern British monarchy also retains ceremonial power and soft influence. It fosters national identity, represents Britain on the international stage, and serves as a moral and cultural symbol rather than a governing authority. Global interest in the monarchy through media, tourism, and diplomacy continues to ensure its relevance. Charles II's reign will define how the monarchy adapts to the 21st century. Lessons from the past are clear. Survival requires adaptability, moral authority, public engagement, and strategic discretion. From medieval conquests to Tudor reforms, Stuart upheavals, and Victorian modernization, the crown has endured by evolving with the times. The British monarchy today stands as a living testament to resilience. Over 1,000 years, countless kings and queens have ruled, fought, and died. Dynasties have risen and fallen, wars, revolutions, and societal transformations have reshaped the land. Yet the crown endures not because of absolute power, but because it has continuously adapted, symbolizing unity, identity, and continuity. Charles III inherits not only a crown, but a story spanning centuries, a story of conquest, survival, and transformation. The monarchy's future will depend on its ability to honor tradition while embracing change, connecting with a nation that values both history and progress. In this way, the British monarchy remains one of the most remarkable institutions in human history. It is more than a lineage, it is a living chronicle of power, resilience, and identity, stretching from the chieftains of early Britain to the modern, constitutional institution of today. The global influence of the British monarchy, culture, diplomacy, and legacy. The British monarchy is no longer simply a national institution, it has become a global symbol, representing centuries of history, tradition, and cultural influence. From medieval kings who ruled through conquest to modern monarchs who engage with diplomacy and charity, the crown's role has evolved, but its significance remains undiminished. One of the monarchy's most enduring legacies is its cultural influence. Royal patronage of the arts, literature, and architecture has shaped British identity. From the castles and palaces that dot the landscape to ceremonial traditions that are still observed today, the monarchy has left an indelible mark on the cultural fabric of Britain. Coronations, jubilees, and royal weddings capture the public imagination and are broadcast worldwide, reinforcing the monarchy as a symbol of continuity and heritage. The monarchy also plays a crucial role in diplomacy. Modern kings and queens, while politically neutral, serve as representatives of the United Kingdom on the global stage. Through state visits, meetings with foreign leaders, and participation in international organizations, the Crown fosters goodwill, strengthens alliances, and projects Britain's image abroad. Historically, monarchs have shaped diplomacy through marriages, treaties, and alliances, while today they continue this tradition through symbolic and ceremonial engagement. The Commonwealth of Nations is perhaps the most significant manifestation of the monarchy's global influence. Established as colonies gained independence, the Commonwealth maintains symbolic ties to the Crown, with many member nations recognizing the British monarch as head of state. This unique network fosters cooperation, cultural exchange, and shared identity across continents, extending the monarchy's reach far beyond Britain's borders. The monarchy also inspires fascination and scrutiny worldwide. Media coverage of royal events from coronations to charity work ensures global visibility. The crown is both a subject of admiration and debate, reflecting changing attitudes toward monarchy, governance, and social hierarchy. This duality highlights the monarchy's ability to endure. It captivates public attention while adapting to evolving societal expectations. Royal philanthropy has become an integral part of modern monarchy. Members of the royal family actively engage in humanitarian causes, environmental initiatives, and public health campaigns. These efforts enhance the monarchy's moral authority, demonstrating that influence extends beyond ceremony to tangible social impact. From Queen Elizabeth II's patronage of countless charities to Charles II's long-standing environmental advocacy, the Crown's engagement reflects a commitment to global and domestic service. Education and historical preservation remain key aspects of the monarchy's legacy. The royal family maintains palaces, archives, and historical sites, ensuring that Britain's history is accessible to the public. This stewardship reinforces the monarchy's role as custodian of national memory, connecting contemporary society with centuries of tradition. Even in a world dominated by media and technology, the monarchy retains its symbolic power. It embodies continuity amidst change, offering a sense of stability during periods of political uncertainty, social upheaval, or international crisis. The crown serves as a living link between past and present, reminding citizens and global audiences of the enduring narrative of Britain's history. In conclusion, the British monarchy is more than a lineage of rulers. It is a cultural, diplomatic, and historical institution. Its influence extends far beyond domestic governance, shaping perceptions, traditions, and international relations. From medieval conquests to modern diplomacy, the monarchy has adapted, survived, and thrived, leaving a legacy that is both national and global in scope. Conclusion: the enduring legacy of the British monarchy. From the earliest chieftains of prehistoric Britain to the present-day monarchy, the story of the British crown spans over a millennium. It is a tale of survival, adaptation, and transformation of kings and queens who wielded power through war, diplomacy, religion, and law, and of an institution that has continually evolved to meet the challenges of changing times. The monarchy has witnessed conquest and unification. From Alfred the Great to William the Conqueror, rulers shaped a fragmented land into a kingdom. Dynastic struggles, civil wars, rebellions, and succession crises, from the Wars of the Roses to the English Civil War, tested royal legitimacy. Religious and political transformation, Henry VIII's Reformation, the Glorious Revolution, and the rise of Parliament ensured that monarchy adapted to changing society. Global expansion and influence, through the Tudors, Stuarts, Hanoverians, and Victorian era, the monarchy became intertwined with Britain's global empire. Modernization and constitutional role, from Elizabeth II to Charles III, the monarchy transitioned from governing authority to moral, cultural, and symbolic leadership. Global symbolism, through culture, diplomacy, and the Commonwealth, the monarchy's influence extends far beyond the British Isles. What makes the British monarchy remarkable is its resilience. Despite wars, abdications, scandals, and societal change, the crown endures. Its power is no longer absolute. Instead, it lies in symbolism, tradition, and the ability to unify people. Every ceremony, every public engagement, and every historical site preserves the connection between Britain's past and present. The monarchy also teaches a timeless lesson: adaptation is survival. From medieval warriors defending their lands to modern monarchs engaging with a global audience, the crown's ability to change while honoring tradition has allowed it to remain relevant for over 1,000 years. As the 21st century progresses, the British monarchy continues to balance history with modernity, tradition with innovation, and symbolism with practical influence. The story of the British monarchy is not just the story of rulers, it is the story of a nation, its people, and its place in the world. And so, the crown lives on, a symbol of continuity, resilience, and identity, reminding us that history is not just about the past, it is a living, evolving narrative, carried forward by those who wear the crown and by the people who watch, admire, and hold it to account.